Hello, and welcome to Entangled, the podcast where we explore the science of consciousness, the true nature of reality, and what it means to be a spiritual being having a human experience. I'm your host, Jordan Euclid, and today I'm joined by my friend, Kendra Wilson. In this episode, Kendra discusses soul retrieval, shamanic journeys, and hypnotherapy. Kendra describes the ups and downs of her healing journey with Lyme disease, including the medical gaslighting, her use of coil machines for healing, and LymeStop therapy. Next, Kendra discusses Transcendental Meditation, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and her decision to enroll in a master's program at Maharishi International University. From there, we discuss the concept of spiritual intrusions and the practice of depossesion. Then we talk about letting go of control and how we flow in tune with the universe when we're able to do so. We end the conversation discussing cosmic consciousness, the natural flow of energy towards least resistance, and discovering bliss while here on Earth. The outro for this episode and all episodes is available at entangledpodcast.substack.com. Please enjoy. Kendra, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Jordan, how are you?
Doing great. Thank you so much for joining the podcast. Really excited for the conversation tonight. Think that there's a lot of different topics that we can cover. Kendra and I actually recently met through our master's program at Maharishi International University, which has been really exciting for me at least, and hopefully for Kendra as well. I'm sure we'll get into that program, which just started a few weeks ago. But maybe to kick things off, Kendra, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your background, and we can go from there.
All right, great. So my name's Kendra, and I'm 35 years old. I grew up in Northwest Indiana, like a little poor kid, survived all that, moved out at 16, and made my way to Iowa for my undergraduate degree at St. Ambrose University. I've always had intuitive gifts. Like when I was a little kid, my dad would be watching Jeopardy, and I'd be like 3 or 4 years old, and I would just know the answer. And I had no way of knowing this information. It just kind of came out of the ethers. And so it stayed with me throughout my life. And when I started college at St. Ambrose in my early 20s, I was gifted a soul retrieval, a shamanic soul retrieval. And what that is basically, I was seeing this therapist, and he was like, you really process through life well, through your trauma. And he was like, you don't need talk therapy, like you're wasting your time because you're positive, you're optimistic, you see the bigger picture, you know what's wrong and you fix it. What you need, you're just fragmented. You've had all this, my dad was an abusive alcoholic and my mom's an alcoholic. And so it was just a lot of years of trauma. And in the therapeutic world, they call it dissociation. In the shamanic world, they call it soul loss. And what that means is you leave a piece of yourself in a moment in time, a piece of your soul or essence of yourself or consciousness in that moment in time. And that's how we're just programmed to do that in order to survive. It's easier to just, we think it's easier to leave that piece of us in that moment. But the only thing we're doing is leaving ourselves fragmented. So a lot of times people with depression and other psychiatric symptoms just need their soul parts back, because we need to be whole. And so he did this soul retrieval. He collected the soul part. He told me how old it was, why it left, and the gift that it's returning, which is the most important thing in the world. That's the only thing to focus on. The other stuff was just, he had no way of knowing this information, stuff I had completely forgotten about. And he brought these soul parts back, and I began to thrive. I stopped drinking and partying, and it just happened passively. I started excelling in school. I changed my major like 100 times, but I changed it like officially. And just, I started studying abroad and traveling the world and just really finding who I was. So that kickstarted my passion. And when I graduated St. Ambrose University, I started studying Sandra Ingerman's work, reading her books. On my flight, I bought a one-way ticket to New Zealand, got a working holiday visa, and I was going over there to learn about sustainability. I wanted to go as far away from this country as possible and just get away from my crazy family and go to the most beautiful place on earth. And I think I found it when I landed. And I just began diving into the shamanic stuff. And when I learned how to do a shamanic journey, I was able to journey to my guides who started teaching me how to do healing work. And I'm a person with crazy high integrity, and so I don't want to practice anything without checking with somebody. So I was checking with like shamanic elders, working with shamans in New Zealand, Maori, and just making sure that what my guides were teaching me was accurate. And it was all spot on, and I just knew. And what that is, when I say guides or power animals, it's just an essence of your own consciousness. It's a piece of yourself that shows up in a way that metaphorically makes sense, like if there's like bear medicine, then there's something about love and protection that you're harnessing. And so I started doing healing work when I lived in New Zealand, mostly distance work. I had some family in the States who, my aunt was diagnosed with cancer and didn't tell anybody what it was. So I did a journey to her and I found all the spots, and it was spot on to, and I knew that she wasn't going to make it. And which again, with these gifts, for lack of a better word, I say gifts, but this is something that everybody's capable of. It's not something that, it's just a matter of diving into your own consciousness and being open and receptive to this. When I lived in New Zealand, it was easy to be wide open because I lived symbiotic with the land. I lived naked in the rainforest in Milford Sound. I fished, spearfished, and hunted and gathered. And, I did a lot of farm work, but for the most part, I lived in Milford Sound towards the end of my visa, and it was just incredible. Like, I could feel the earth. I could feel when there was going to be a mudslide or a storm or an earthquake. I would know when the tide was going to be high or low, and when optimal spearfishing would be. Like, it would just be like a sound in my heart. I felt completely feral. I had like my hair turned into dreadlocks, and I just literally, like, there's a picture on the internet somewhere of me naked and spearfishing by a waterfall on the foreshore of Milford Sound. And it was like these tourists saw me spearfishing, and they were like, can I take this picture but for you, because this is how people are supposed to live. And so it was really great, and it made it easier to do this healing work because I was so wide open in my consciousness. And fast forwarding to now, I do hypnotherapy and stuff now as well. I started doing that a year ago, and in the middle of all that, I ended up getting sick with Lyme disease that I've probably had most of my life. And the answer to why I was dying, I got pregnant with my daughter in 2016 after I moved back to the country and moved to Colorado, and I got really, really sick. I battled a little bit of cancer, treated it naturally and holistically, and it went away. All stuff I would never recommend anybody doing, but it worked for me, so I'm grateful. Lots of healing work, lots of conscious work, crystal bowl meditations at my friend's yurt every weekend, shamanic journey groups, drum circles, and different things. And, even my uterine fibroids went away. I learned that after I got pregnant in 2016 and got violently ill. And when my daughter was 9 months old, and she was really sick, born sick from me, obviously, and I was dying, and I had this dream that said over and over again, you have Lyme disease, you have encephalitis right now, go to the emergency room. And so I did, and the lady, if anybody listening has Lyme disease, the medical gaslighting is insane. People don't believe you, they tell you you're crazy, it's all in your head, there's nothing wrong with your kid, even though we were like hypothermic chronically and just sweating formaldehyde, literally actively dying. And so I went to this hospital at 4 a.m, and this lady was like, have you been evaluated for Lyme? Because I can test you with an ELISA, but it's not accurate. You have to pay for the iGenX test. It's not covered. And, I'm telling you, it sounds like you have chronic Lyme disease, and this is going to be a tough journey, but at least you know. And so 2 days later, I met this holistic doctor, Dr. Kurt Bokenhauer, in Omaha, Nebraska. I was out there for a little while, and he started treating me with a coil machine. It's like uses frequencies and stuff, and my daughter and I got a lot better. But then we did experimental Lyme stuff and got worse, and spent a year bedridden, which changed me in a lot of ways for the best, unfortunately. I like to call these things gifts with shit on them, because it really it really is. Like, once you wipe off the shit, there's a gift under there. It just takes a lot of heart to see it, I guess. But, it really has opened up my empathy, my love for literally anybody going through anything. If somebody's angry or mad, I'm like, I don't know what they've got going on in their heart, but I'm just going to bless them with love, because I've been there. And when I got a little bit better, I did like bee venom therapy and all kinds of crazy stuff, stem cell therapy, and now I'm doing LymeStop in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and that seems to be working pretty well as long as I can stay out of mold.
And what is LymeStop?
Oh, yeah. So it's all natural, and it's approved by ILIADS, which is like the International Lyme Disease Association. They actually gave my daughter a grant to treat her. They use magnets. It's kind of like, it's like craniobiotic therapy. A lot of people know what that is for like allergies and stuff. But it basically, there are different points on your body, and they use magnets on specific spots of your body, usually on the top of your head, to change your magnetic field and then activate your immune system to the points on your body, almost like acupuncture points, where each Lyme infection, because Lyme disease isn't just Lyme, it's like Bartonella, Babesia, all the crap that goes with it. It's a nightmare of diseases and pathogens. But it activates your immune system to attack each one in order. And I could tell in my body, which pathogens were dying. Like a week after LymeStop, my vision was really blurry, and they found a toxoplasmosis infection. So I could tell that's what was dying. Because with Lyme, everything flares as it dies, because it's like each pathogen has a bunch of endotoxins and biotoxins that kill you slowly when they're alive, and then when they die, it like bursts and all this junk gets dumped into your system. It's horrible. So I noticed that first, and then I noticed like Epstein-Barr virus. I had a really bad Epstein-Barr flare as it was dying, and like I have the labs to confirm when it was flaring, my titers were off the charts, and now they're gone completely. So like it works. But, I found a little mild aspergillus problem at my current house, so we're remediating that this week, and I think that's why I felt so bad. And I go to my follow-up. They do a follow-up after 4 months, and you go, like the first treatment is like for a week. You go every day, a couple times a day, and they keep treating you for a week, and then you go back 4 months later, and all of this is only like $3,500. I mean, it's insane how anyone with Lyme disease probably spit out their drink even just hearing that, because I spent $20,000 on stem cell therapy, ozone therapy. It's $20,000-$30,000 if you can actually afford that to heal, and it doesn't work half the time. And so, like for $3,500, they have an 85% success rate, and with kids, like for Lyme, that's huge.
That's amazing.
And I was feeling like I was in remission for a while, like I was exercising again every day. And then I think it's just the recent mold exposure, and because it's time for my 4-month follow-up. And that's why they make you come back in 4 months, because like dormant stuff can pop up, and then they clean it out the rest of the way. They give you all the supplements and put you on a protocol. And with me, I have mast cell activation syndrome, which means like it's hell, but it's like a hypersensitivity from limbic trauma. I'm sensitive to chemicals, smells, mold, like pretty much everything. I can eat like 3 foods, which that started to get better too before this just recently. So I was nervous about the supplements and stuff, but I tolerated them all really well, thank God. So we did that, and I'm super hopeful about that. But honestly, recently, I started at MIU, and I've always known, everything is consciousness. Everything is, everyone who's ever healed has had a deep spiritual connection. One of my favorite books is Cured by Dr. I think it's Jeffrey Rediger, and there's a pattern. He studied spontaneous remission and recovery, which isn't like overnight. It just means like people with incurable illnesses, like legally defined, diagnosed curable illnesses, were cured. And one of the biggest patterns is just people had faith and a deep level of consciousness. They were consciously aware of themselves and expanded that consciousness, and they got better. And some of them changed their diet and like started exercising or doing yoga. Some of them did nothing, and they still got better. So I really believe that it's just layers. And as I dive into Transcendental Meditation, which I do religiously twice a day, every day, I can see so much more. And I feel like I'm a fairly conscious being already, especially being in hypnotherapy, studying the subconscious mind. I mean, it's everything. Like if we're lucky, we use 5% of our brains, that's our conscious thinking mind. But everything we do is subconscious. And I've been doing just as much work on myself as I do with other people with hypnosis. And it's really opened me up to see my own patterns and put it in front of me so I can change what I want to and rearrange it and get rid of things that don't serve me. But it takes time. I mean, maybe it doesn't. I don't know everything. I believe in miracles, and I believe that I could wake up tomorrow and start training for a marathon goals. But, I also think that there's a part of it that's healing karma. And when I say that, I don't mean like the daunting karma, like you did bad things in life. It's darkness haunting you. It just means karma, in my own personal definition of karma, is just the inability to forgive oneself. Because like in hypnosis, I've been exploring quantum jumping, and I offer a quantum jumping session. I've got a recording on my website, and I can personalize it too, but it's about healing karma, and it takes you back to an event that is the cause. And when I went back to my own cause of course, I'm going to go back to why am I sick? Why am I dealing with Lyme disease? I saw myself doing horrible things, and the message that I felt in my heart was like, I was like defending myself, but I had to hurt somebody, and it was like 3 lifetimes ago, and like it was really wild. It wasn't the fact that I hurt somebody, that I was being punished by like some sort of sick law. It was the fact that I couldn't forgive myself for it. And so like our soul, our consciousness doesn't change lifetime to lifetime. So if you have a full glass and try to pour water and it's going to overflow, it doesn't work. And we come into these bodies with a full glass, and we have all this junk that we've carried with us from so many lifetimes. And it doesn't mean you have to go back to every single event, but just going back to one event opens you up so much more, just knowing that. And you don't manipulate it, you don't change it. It's not like other hypnosis sessions where you make it what you want, something beautiful, and manifest it and then future pace to what your life is like. This, you just witness it. And by simply witnessing it, it corrects it because you become consciously aware of it. How can you forgive yourself from something that you're not consciously aware of?
Is this quantum jumping you're describing?
Yeah,
okay.
Sorry. And so in quantum jumping, and that's just one of the quantum jumping sessions I do. Is
that similar to like past life regression?
It is. It's similar. Past life regression, it's more like you're manipulating things and changing them just by giving love to the parts of you that need them the most, giving that part of you what it is you need to heal, the resources. But in quantum jumping, it's just like the gentle observer, non-judgmental. Yeah, and for me, like I do past life regressions too, and I love them. I think a lot of stuff can be done doing the shamanic work too. It's simpler in my opinion, but I love the quantum jumping. I feel like it dives in way deeper, and it just goes straight to the point. And I feel like simultaneously doing things like Transcendental Meditation, they'll get there eventually. Like eventually your consciousness will be so wide open doing TM or Transcendental Meditation that these things will just become obvious. You may not see the vision of what you did, but you may just get this sense in your heart that I think I need to put down all this junk that I'm carrying, that doesn't serve me. I need to love and forgive myself. And I think Louise Hay says forgiveness is the root of all disease, and I truly believe that. And it was when I finally decided to commit to forgiveness, and I didn't even consciously understand what that meant, but I did like a whole shamanic ritual. I was pregnant with my daughter in 2016, and just about forgiveness, and that's when I started to get sick. And with Lyme disease, when you start to heal, you get worse. When stuff dies inside your body, it just wreaks havoc. I don't know that it has to, but that's just been my experience. It's taught me some painful lessons. And then some other things that I like to do in quantum jumping, I haven't uploaded any of these recordings to my website yet, but I've been doing some of these sessions where the slit theory suggests that when we observe something, these particles collapse in time and space, suggesting that perhaps these particles can exist in other time and space, but they're just not being observed the same way. And when they don't know they're being observed, then they act differently. So, that's the super general description of it. Obviously, people listening can Google it and read the whole study. It's fascinating. But we exist in multiple dimensions in time and space. Whatever you want is happening somewhere. So Like, obviously, I want perfect health. I want to run a marathon. I want my life back. I want to be able to eat food again and enjoy it and have a cup of coffee and not go into anaphylactic shock and die. So you can go to a version of yourself and you can interview it, ask it questions. There's a version of you that solved this problem. And when I quantum jump to versions of me who have solved mast cell activation and Lyme disease, a lot of it is they're like, just keep meditating, like keep doing your transcendental meditation, because that's what's going to get you there the best way. And I truly believe that. I don't think it's some magic cure. I think, I can kill Lyme disease all day long, but if I don't heal my limbic system and limbic trauma and heal my own life inside my heart and just open my consciousness and be okay with all the past lives and all the junk that I've been through that I'm carrying and I don't even know it. Expanding your consciousness is the most important thing you can do. And I think there's a lot of like toxic spirituality out there. People are like the good vibes only crowd. I apologize if I'm offending anybody. But like, it's not about thinking positive. I mean, that's good. I think it's great, but not to the point of like gaslighting the real feelings and not feeling them. I think that's super important. It's an important part of healing and growing, and vulnerability is a beautiful thing. It's a gift to yourself. But I think, it's not about like going up. A lot of people are like, rise up, high vibration, rise up. And it's like, it's not about going up. It's about going in. And when we can go within ourselves, everything we want truly is in there, and this is all stuff that I knew prior to getting sick or knowing I was sick. I've probably been sick. I've been sick most of my life. But
so do you think you had got Lyme like as a kid and then it just didn't really activate until later in life?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it did activate. Like, I was diagnosed with POTS when I was 5 years old, where you sit up too fast and black out, So I think I had like Bartonella is one of the worst infections.
So you think those are all symptoms of having the Lyme? Okay, got it. I didn't realize that. Interesting.
Yeah, I had a lot of Lyme symptoms, a lot of neurological problems from the time I was a kid, like insomnia as a little kid, which is not normal, POTS. I had cats who would get fleas. Fleas carry Babesia, cats carry Bartonella. I have both those infections. I had stretch marks as a really young, little girl, and I was never overweight. I've always been really petite, and so stretch marks are very, very common. They call it the Bartonella rash. And the way that the stretch marks are, don't even go with the pattern of my skin. I've had them my whole life. It's really, really wild. So yeah, I've definitely been sick with it most of my life. Like, I'm sure one of my cats scratched me and fleas bit me, and we had mice in the house and all kinds of, and black mold. And then I got sick with mono, which caused the Epstein-Barr virus. And I missed 6 months of school. I was bedridden in high school from mono. And so it's just been a journey. And of course, I'm no expert. I think your environment does matter. Obviously, to calm my system down, I have to make sure I'm in a completely mold-free environment. I always have to do the ERMI tests everywhere I live, which tests the dust and not just the air. And and I feel like I have to live in a bubble. But I know that the deeper I go within myself, that this stuff won't matter as much. And so I think that living in a clean, healthy, safe environment is super important, but I also think that there's a point where you can build your resilience to where that stuff shouldn't matter. I spent a decade traveling the world, and I've slept in moldy hostels and outside and tents and mud huts and things that I know had mold, and I didn't feel symptoms. But and I was also living completely symbiotic to the earth. So I think there's something to that. And I equate that to, it's similar to transcendental meditation, the way that it opens you up. It's easy to be love and light when you're showering in waterfalls and glacier rivers every day that are so clean, tested 99.999% pure, you could drink out of them. And, living off the land in the most beautiful place on earth, it's easy to be wide open and pure. But living in a city, I love Denver, but, it can be challenging to get in touch if you're not consciously aware. But again, it's all about going within yourself, because everything we need, everything is consciousness. and everything we need is within ourselves, all the answers. And if we spend a little bit, it's not even a lot of time, Transcendental meditation is 20 minutes twice a day, and you have to be trained by like a professional, somebody who's been trained to teach Transcendental meditation. And it's a beautiful ritual. It's a beautiful ceremony.
And maybe it would be helpful for folks if you could go a little deeper into what is Transcendental Meditation, who is Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and what is MIU.
Yeah, that's a good point. So Maharishi International University is in Fairfield, Iowa. So I'm obviously studying online. He is a yogi, he's a physicist, and he became, he worked in the field of science, and he basically proves that everything is consciousness. And he created this beautiful, simple technique called Transcendental Meditation, which is like this key that unlocks the door to everything. And it's so incredibly simple, but you have to you can go to like tm.org and find a teacher, and you have to go through the ceremony because it's specific to you. But it's 20 minutes twice a day, and there's basically a sound or a chant that you're given. It's specific to you and your ceremony, and you think it, and you just allow it to flow. And the beautiful thing about TM is that you don't fight your thoughts. It's not about clearing your head, because when you think thoughts and you have a busy mind, it's because your nervous system is releasing and detoxing essentially like all these thoughts. So like it basically helps eliminate stress. And with having chronic neurological disease for most of my life, I actually experienced like a little bit of Lyme die off. Like I could tell that something was shifting in my nervous system when I started doing TM. But then, my tests come back like this infection's gone. And of course I just had LymeStop too. But I definitely noticed a shift in my body, my physiology. I just started doing TM at the end of January, right before I started my master's degree program. And I had severe chronic fatigue. I mean, it was just like I would have to take 2 naps a day, and my daughter hadn't started school yet. And it was just like I was dying to keep up with her. She's 5 now. And I'm a single mom with like a disease and a kid with a disease. So not to like pity party, but it's a lot. And with doing TM, and she knows, like she'll be quiet during my meditation. Mm-hmm. She knows, like, because she sees when I do this, I have more energy. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I started exercising again, was like after I started TM, and I, before this last flare because of the mold exposure, which I think in the future won't, I won't be as sensitive, but like I've pretty much cured chronic fatigue syndrome. Like I don't need 12 hours of sleep at night to function. I can sleep 6 or 7 hours and be okay and make it through the day without a nap. And I haven't napped in months. And, it's just, even on my worst flare days, I don't have to sleep. And it's just incredible because the body goes into this deep rest as if you're sleeping, but you're completely consciously aware, even though you may not be aware of your body, depending on how deep you go. But it's not even about that. Like you can have the busiest mind during your entire meditation, and just knowing that you got all that junk out of your nervous system is just, it feels magical. And it's just the easiest thing in the world. You don't have to sit a certain way. I mean, it's about being comfortable and that's it. You can do it anywhere. It doesn't have to be quiet. If you can sit in a chair, like you can do TM. Yeah. So I think that's been a huge game changer for me, just in life in general. Even with doing hypnotherapy, I feel like that has allowed me to dive deep into some things, but I feel like it only scratches the surface compared to what TM does. I think it's just, and it makes me want to do more of like the quantum jumping style work and like any deep conscious based work.
Yeah, totally.
Because I'm like, I can talk about your problem that's happening right now, but I think that there's something way deeper to the root of it, that we're not even consciously aware of. And even traditional hypnosis sessions just don't go into it. So, my goal is to just educate people about like the quantum field and consciousness and have workshops and stuff throughout the summer and just do like teach people quantum jumping and I could probably even teach it in a way where people could just do it at home themselves without needing a hypnosis induction. But I think that does help because like the hypnosis bypasses the critical thinking mind and goes straight to the subconscious where lasting change happens. You can change your patterns, your neural pathways. So I think having that hypnosis induction is really helpful. But I feel like the more you open up your consciousness and dive within yourself, it's easier to get there, So the vehicle can change. It doesn't have to be a hypnosis induction. You can get yourself there.
And so a lot of places we could take the conversation. One question I had as you were going through everything, you talked a lot about shamanic practices and how you were introduced to shamanism. And could you help define what that is and what were some of those practices and rituals that you've learned?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Gosh, there's so much. So, and again, it all ties into consciousness. I use drumming. Like I've never done, I'm so boring, but I use drumming. I don't even like use pot to get to an elevated state of consciousness. The drums slow the brainwave down to theta so that you can have like a hypnotic out-of-body experience. It's monotonous drumming, and that's always I don't need it. I can use like a rattle or just something, some sort of percussion, and it helps me to have that out-of-body experience. And I use the power of intention. So like if I want to, and there are different levels of consciousness that you can go into in the shamanic world. There are different worlds. Like there's like the underworld or lower world, which doesn't mean like, a lot of like traditional Christians will be like, oh God, the underworld, but it's not like that. It just means earthy. It just means like, your power animal usually lives there, which again is just another part of your consciousness showing up in a metaphor that makes sense to whatever it is you need at the moment. And whatever guidance you need, everything means something. If it's light or dark, it means something. Night or day, or cold or warm, everything means something in a shamanic journey. So I literally I set an intention 3 times. I play the drumming, and then I just watch myself leave my body. And whatever intention I set, like I have a spirit guide in the form of a human who will come to me, and they live in the upper world, which is like airy and light, and it's not as like heavy and dense as the lower world and earthy, and then if I want to do a healing session for somebody, and I do a lot of remote work, it's just with COVID it just makes sense, but it just in today's society I can do this, and the person doesn't have to do a thing. They could just be living their day-to-day life. I mean, if they don't want me to see what they're doing, I cannot do anything without permission. That's the other thing. So, like, even if I wanted to do a journey about you, Jordan, and ask the universe why you came into my life, I will only get why in my life, like what matters to me, like what your purpose in my life is. But if I say, well, why did I come into Jordan's life? My guide would stop me and say, you don't have permission from Jordan to know that. So even if I innocently asked a question, if I don't have permission, I can't do it. So if I want to do a journey for somebody, a healing session, we schedule a time where I have permission, they know, and it's only during that time, and then I journey to them. And obviously, like if they're in the shower, I'm going to see them because it's wild, but I just, with this intention, I can see people's houses. I found missing people before, doing this work. Just with the intention, and I have to journey to the person's higher self to ask them permission if I can even find them, and some people have said no, but not many. And then the few that and some people have passed on, and I'm like, oh God, there's spirits here, they're dead, and I hate giving that news. So there's like a lot of responsibility that comes with this. But the middle world is like the spirit version of the world we're living in now. And essentially everything has a spirit. Like I can journey to that candle's spirit, or to the spirit of your house, or to the spirit of anything at all, the spirit of the water, and sometimes I do that and just activate it and then drink it, and it feels really healing and refreshing and rejuvenating. So in the shamanic world, there's really nothing that you can't do. And then I do a lot of like divination work. That just means you have a question, I find the answer. It might come in a wacky metaphor, and the spirits might make you go through work to figure it out. And the meaning might change over time too. But, I do a lot of sessions like that. I have people come up with 3 questions and they'll email them to me, and I just do the journey and send it back to them. I'll do like a voice recording or type it up if I feel like being old fashioned and send it to them. But with soul retrieval, so first I do a full clearing, and I've seen some shamanic practitioners who they don't do the extraction and clearing work first. And you can't bring soul parts back successfully that can stay. It's like filling up a full glass of water. If you're full of junk that doesn't serve your highest good, or like spiritual intrusions, that's another, I cross over spirits and do a lot of work with spiritual intrusions. And so I will remove any spiritual intrusions and seal the individual so that they can't be, so that their sacred space is theirs and they can't be invaded again. And it's not like the movie The Exorcist. It's just like spirits miss having a body, It's not like you're not going to spin your head around and barf pea soup. It's not like that at all. It's just like a lot of people who suffer from insomnia. The dramatic term is I do a depossession, but I just don't like using that. I just say I remove spiritual intrusions because depossession sounds so scary.
Yeah.
And I can do it in a really terrifying way where I channel the spirit through the person and they talk through the person. But most people can't handle that. So I just, wait till I'm done and tell them and, remove it. But some people don't get scared easily, and they request that I do it that way. And so I just put you to sleep basically in a trance, and then I communicate only with the spirit. I ask them why they're in your body, who they are, how they died.
So when we did our soul retrieval session and I had a spiritual intrusion, did it tell you anything about who it was?
Oh man. So I'd have to see your piece of paper, but
yeah.
I do remember. Sometimes I just don't remember I have photographic memory, but I almost feel like it's none of my business. So I just forget it. Like I set the intention to forget it. So I do remember your spiritual intrusion was actually from another dimension. And I think I remember. Is it okay if I say why it came to?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I'm pretty open about it.
So it was from doing psychedelics that it just opens you up in a way. So if anybody's out there doing psychedelics, just set the intention beforehand that, my body is mine. I'm not open to spiritual intrusions. Maybe call me for a soul retrieval. I don't know. Can check you out. But things like that. So when I seal somebody after a spiritual intrusion, you can't really, nothing can invade you again. They enter through the occipital. So a lot of people get, that's the back of your head. A lot of people will get occipital headaches or migraines, insomnia because spirits don't sleep. I do like to ask them how they died because I had a fear of water for a long time, and when my friend gifted me a soul retrieval, we did a depossession, and I had a spiritual intrusion who had drowned. And so my irrational fear of water left with that spirit. But you always have to do a soul retrieval right afterwards because people can start to feel lonely inside if they've had an intrusion for a long time. And it's just not, so I do everything all in one. I don't mess around. I don't wait 3 days to do a soul retrieval. I know some people who do, and it's just miserable. It's just unnecessary. And I think I've just been doing this for 13 years. So it comes to me so quickly that some shamanic practitioners take hours and hours. I can do everything in about 20 to 30 minutes. And that's if I'm really taking my time. So it just is really quick and easy for me. And I'm thorough, I just get information really quickly, and I think it's just because of being so open. And so once I set the intention I merge with one of my guides so that I don't suck up all the junk from the individual. And then I'll scan the body, sometimes I think there's a Christopher Walken movie where there's a shaman and he's going over the girl's body and he's shaking his hand, and that's one of the techniques that I was taught by my guides and also by one of Sandra Ingerman's teachers or practitioners who teaches this work in Colorado. And it'll change with the energy, there's something I'm going over my own body and it changes, with different organs that are bothering me right now, and that's one of it. Things will show up in spirit form. I had a friend who I didn't know had colon cancer in the past, and I pulled these black snakes out of her guts, and then like in spirit form, she was given like new guts. And so things like that might happen, and it just kind of shows me that like something doesn't belong, you know, that like obviously snakes don't belong in the guts. It may not necessarily be about a metaphor of like what do the snakes mean. It just means something is there that doesn't belong. And so sometimes I have like this straw, or I merge with like a power animal, and I'll like eat the stuff out of the person, or like I'll suck it out with a giant straw. And then I use like fire, so I'll throw stuff into a candle, and I don't have to. I can imagine it, and it's just the same, you know, because our consciousness doesn't know the difference, especially when the drumming is going. So once the whole body is clear, my guides will tell me, and I might be doing chakra work. I might be opening chakras. There might be chakras that don't want to be open, and they're not ready to be open. I don't mess with stuff that's not ready to be open. Unlike Reiki, where it's like, open them up. It's like, they might not be ready yet, but I might get a message like, hey, in 3 weeks, they're going to be ready for their, you know, third eye chakra to be open. So just have them come back. And if my guides tell me that, like, I don't charge someone to come back in 3 weeks to open their third eye. You know, it's like, you paid for your session. I'm not trying to rope you into 2 sessions. Like, it's just, again, the integrity thing. But once the person's all clear, then I do the soul retrieval. So I just set the intention to bring back any and all soul parts who are ready and willing to come back for whatever this person needs for their highest good, for their life purpose and soul mission right now. Because that's the only time there is in our current consciousnesses right now. And some people have specific intentions like, hey, I was abused at this age and I want to go back. I want that soul part back, but that soul part might not be ready to come back. You know, you need a foundation first, and some of those other ones that aren't so intense might come back, and they don't bring back the trauma by any means. They only bring back gifts. The trauma has already happened. It's gone, so it can't happen again.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, like the few days after we did our soul retrieval session, like, and a couple other pretty cool synchronistic things happened in like quick succession that I felt like it was like a leveling up in consciousness for me, and like I would finally like was back to like my full self, and so it was really cool experience.
That's super awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for that feedback.
Yeah,
I get a lot of interesting feedback. A lot of it's like, whoa, you know, how did you know that? Because most people who I work with, I don't know their history. Most of them are complete strangers, and I ask them not to tell me anything about them before we start, because how do you prove what you do isn't total bonkers, you know? And so when I ask the soul parts why they left, how old they were, and the gift that they're returning, and sometimes they might be vague, you know, they might say, I might just see a baby and I'm just guessing that they might be a couple months old, or I might see a person like whatever age they are right now, if I don't know what age they are, that might not say it, but for the most part they tell me. And the nice part is, if the event why they left will cause trauma from the individual knowing it, they'll tell me in a metaphor that will make it gentler, easier. Yeah, and if it's something that, like, I did this work at Community Prep High School in Colorado Springs, so, like, they hired me as a life coach, but they knew, like, what I was doing because kids were starting to get off drugs, and the kids at Community Prep were doing these meditations up in the mountains where I lived at the time, and I was up in, like, Florissant area. And my friend had this beautiful, like, yurt style thing. She called it the mandala. And she was a therapist. And they would do, like, binaural beats, meditations. And she invited me to do soul retrievals for these high school kids at this alternative high school. And so the director was like, I don't know what kind of weird shit you do, his exact words, but, like, I want to hire you because kids are getting off, like, heroin, you know, meth. And they're cleaning up their act. They're doing so much better, you know, because, like, you know, I journey to these soul parts, I bring them back, and then these kids become whole, and kids, even teenagers, respond so quickly. Pets respond really quickly. It's like the older we get, and adult, like, older people do too. You know, I just did work for a retired couple, and, you know, they're already changing their life. The lady's like,
That's
now I want to
great.
quit smoking cigarettes and, like, do better for myself. So, you know, I guess everybody kind of responds quickly, but kids, it's just so night and day.
Well, and they also probably are more neuroplastic and, you know, aren't as ingrained in their thought patterns as older folks tend to be.
That's such a good point, and I think you're absolutely right about that. And like, I'll never forget this kid. I won't say his name, just like out of love for him and respect. But I did this soul retrieval for all these kids, and I was like, there's one kid who didn't do it. He was like slouched down on the couch. He looked like the Unabomber. Like he had his, wearing all black, face covered up, glasses inside, hardcore into drugs, like heavy. And finally, I was like, I know you want a soul retrieval. I'm not going to be pushy, but like this is the last one. And there was a big thunder drum, so the kids would drum for each other. It was community style. Cool. It was beautiful. And it's just so much more power. I mean, it's super powerful no matter what, but it's just so much more powerful when there's so much love and intention flowing into it. Love is truly the thing that heals us. And he finally was like, yeah, I really want one. And that was it. And I like, his shakes me up so much even to this day. The nice part when I was doing these in a group session is if kids had severe trauma, they would give me a metaphor. If the kids didn't want me to know something, it would come in a metaphor so they would know what I was talking about, know that I wasn't just some crazy lady. And it was always completely accurate. And they, the kids would always cry and hug me and say thank you. Some of them still, reach out to me today. It's been, 6 or 7 years now, maybe longer. And anyway, so this kid, he lays down, I start clearing him, and I just have I don't like to use the word demons, but it paints the picture of what I removed from him. I just believe in like high or low vibrational beings. And these were the lowest vibrational beings I've ever witnessed. They came from other dimensions that were like out of this world. I had to call in like extra guides to protect everybody in the room. And I removed all this junk. And I see this a lot with drug addicts. I've helped a lot of like homeless heroin addicts get completely clean and sober and like get their lives back doing this work. But this kid, I mean, I removed so much junk, and I don't even remember the details about his soul retrieval, but I know it was powerful, and he had tears like coming out from under his glasses, and I just gave him the biggest hug. But after his session, I was like, I just got to beat on this drum for a minute. I need to meditate or pray or something. Yeah. And the next day I went to the school. This was up in the mountains at the Mandala. And I went to the school, and I was sitting there with my friend who's a therapist. We were both on the campus that day. And he walked in the room, and I introduced myself to him because I didn't recognize him.
No way.
Yeah. And my friend, who's the therapist, she laughed at me. She said, I did the same thing today. And that's when I got my raise. That's when I got, more and more referrals because of him. And fast forward to now, he has traveled the world. He's completely off drugs. He's sober, and he stopped drugs literally instantly overnight. Yeah. He was wearing like bright tie-dye colors. I could see his face. He didn't have sunglasses on. It made me cry my eyes out. And like, I love following his journey, like on Instagram and stuff, just seeing, he's living his dreams. And I'm not saying like I did that by any means. He was brave enough to ask for this, and he took his own power back and the information that I gave him, and he was able to do something with it.
Wow.
And so like, I think this work is really powerful, I think, again, I think that's something that can be achieved through years and years of transcendental meditation. I think it's just like the slow way to get there. You know?
Yeah, it's funny. My friend John was on a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about like, as you work with spirituality and this healing stuff, people can be attracted to all the flashy stuff, right? And like I talk about psychedelics a lot. You're talking about quantum jumping and shamanic rituals, but at the end of the day, the 80% of it is what matters, right? The daily meditation, eating healthy, getting good rest, avoiding toxins, like the very boring stuff that you hear ad nauseum, but that's what it comes down to.
I agree completely. It really does. And I think, again, I don't think that I have gifts. I've had like psychic abilities since I was a kid. I remember being in the womb. I remember being born. I remember not wanting to be born, and my umbilical cord was around my neck, because my mother didn't want me from the time that I was conceived. And so, I think, and maybe it was just, I don't know why that is, but my daughter is the exact same way too. She remembers, she's really conscious, and she'll tell me, there's this beautiful story that I've never shared with anybody, but I knew I was going to end up being a single mom. I knew I needed my daughter, which I would have never learned about Lyme disease. It probably would have turned into leukemia, because that's what Lyme does eventually. It just turns into awful cancers, which I've had cancer twice in my life, so I'm sure that was the underlying cause. But, my life just wouldn't be worth anything, really. I mean, I was just living aimlessly without purpose. I had little empathy in the ways that I do now, comparatively speaking. So she's just been the greatest gift. And I knew I needed to have a kid. And it sounds crazy. And it was I'll even do single mothers by choice. I'll work 10 jobs if I have to. But I feel like I have to have a kid. And I knew it was more than a biological clock thing. It was just a purpose in life thing. And I used to dig rocks and crystals, mining up in Florissant. And so I had this beautiful smoky quartz crystal, double terminated, absolutely gorgeous. And I put this, I went to did my prayer ritual, made a tobacco prayer tie, and then I took the tobacco prayer tie, I lit a candle, and then I went out to the forest, and because I lived up in the woods in the middle of the mountains. It was so gorgeous. And I put a prayer, I know I need to have a baby, and I know this sounds insane, but if this is in my highest good, this is my offering. And recently my daughter, and I never told that to anybody. I mean, that's a weird thing to tell somebody to begin with, and I've never said that out loud, and I kind of just forgot about it. And within a year, I ended up getting pregnant. I met my daughter's father, and of course it didn't end up working out. It was never supposed to, and that's okay. But she said to me maybe a few months ago, she said, I remember where I was before I was born. I was living with the stars, and I wanted to find you, but I had a hard time finding you. I had to go to the forest and find the prayer. And I just started bawling. Yeah. And she said that, and I was I've never said that out loud, but she's just one of those kids. She doesn't have the amnesia that we come into this lifetime and forget our past lives. And, she remembers, she talks about, I might sound like a total crazy person, but she's talked about her star friends, and she's talked about, how she's yeah, I see them and they turn blurry when grown-ups are in the room.
Interesting.
And I'm whoa. And there was one time I was really sick, and when I was bedridden in 2020, and she came up to me, and she was only 3, and she's always been able to speak really well, and just ridiculously smart. She's on the autism spectrum, socially, but she's so ridiculously smart. She came up to me and she said, Mommy, you're going to feel a little bit better tomorrow. My star friends are going to help you, the Arcturian ones. And I'm the what? And she said, the Arcturian ones, they're the blue ones. And so I had to Google it, and I'm pretty versed in this stuff, but I didn't know. And it was holy crap, the Arcturians are the blue ones. How does she know this?
That's wild.
Yeah.
Well, and I think what's so cool about having you as a mom is you're actually encouraging her, and you're opening her up to the idea these are real. And I actually think that it's probably more likely than not that is the natural way of things, that kids are more attuned to the spiritual realm and supernatural beings, but it's just our society beats it out of them, and eventually their third eye closes and they are cut off from that sense perception.
I agree completely. I try to nourish that part of her as much as possible, and just allow her to be so creative and innocent and open. I have I used to record the conversations when I was pregnant. I used to sense that I would, I'd have dreams with aliens and stuff, but I'd wake up and I'm falling into my bed, and I'm what? I don't know if that was a dream or not. And, I've recorded conversations with my daughter about what her star friends said and did, and how they spent time at the Garden of the Gods in the night. And that was yeah, it's wild. And she'd wake up crying in the night, where's my bear? And, she's in the middle of the floor, and she sleeps next to me. And I didn't feel her get up, and I sleep really light. And I'm maybe she did go somewhere. I don't know, or maybe her consciousness went somewhere, because it's not about what we physically experience, sometimes. So I don't try to change that part of her. And, it's either homeschool or something like Waldorf, where it's really creative minded, and where they allow kids to just be who they are, I think that's really important.
And it's interesting you bring up with extraterrestrials too. Something I've talked about on here before is I think the whole phenomenon of abduction is something that pop culture has misinterpreted in a lot of ways, right? And people think that it's your physical body is being blasted up into space, and I certainly think that that is possible, but I also think even more often, probably likely, it's your astral body and your consciousness that's connecting with these beings in another dimension or intra-dimensionally, but not actually your entire body is gone.
I think that's very true too. Like I said, I've had a lot of experiences, and I might sound like a crazy person to some people, but it's just undeniable. And I think if you're open, then you get it. When I was first sick with Lyme disease, a lot of my problems were like heart, lungs, kidneys, brain, and eyes, gosh, everything. But I had this reoccurring kidney infection that doctors were like, they're testing me for AIDS, for cancer. They're like, why won't you get better? And all of it's negative, and my blood work looks fantastic. And anyone with Lyme, they're laughing because they know this story all too well. Like, your labs are fine, you're crazy. But I had this reoccurring kidney infection, and I really feel like I might have died from it if this didn't happen. But I had this, I don't know if it was a dream or a hallucination from being sick or whatever it was, it doesn't matter, because it was real in my body. But I saw this being, it looked like an extraterrestrial, walk over to me in the middle of the night, and it was before I knew I had Lyme, and they put their hands on me and then walked over to us, like stumbled over to my closet. It was like they sucked up the disease and then just like disappeared. And I don't know if it died or just turned back into energy or what, but I'm like, I just remember that so clearly. And during that time, I would struggle with like memory lapses. I'd walk to the wrong apartment, like Lyme is just freaking horrible. And I would just ask, like yell out to the ethers, like, I'm having a memory lapse. Where is my home? And they tell me the number of my apartment. Like this number would just pop in my head. And obviously it could have been my own consciousness, but it was around the time when I was experiencing a lot of stuff. And it always seems like when I'm really, really sick, I have experiences with extraterrestrials, like a vivid dream or something. And I really think it is just a layer of consciousness because they can travel through time and space. And I mean, look at the universe. I mean, Jesus, we're not the only living planet here. And when another experience I had it was like a really vivid dream, but I was up in like a spacecraft, and I've had a rocky relationship with my family. Like I pretty much can't have anything to do with them. They're just all really abusive alcoholics, but I pray for them and I send them love. They're really great. I believe in the conscious energy, and maybe it's just a reflection of a part of me that I'm not anymore, and it doesn't serve me anymore. So that's why we just don't communicate. But I'm like, I want to send love to my brother. I want to send love to my mom, but they're just not safe, healthy people to speak to on a conscious eye-to-eye level. It's just not possible. And I had this experience where I was up in this spacecraft, and an essence of my brother was up there, and these extraterrestrials were like teaching me how to communicate telepathically, which a lot of people think is the brain, but it wasn't. They were like, no. And I thought the same thing. They were like, no, we speak with our hearts. Like, you have to open your heart. And if you use your heart, you can send love to his heart, and he knows you love him, and you know he loves you. But in the human, like the brain is sick, in his body. So like that's where stuff gets miscommunicated. And I think that's overall a good lesson for anybody in any situation, is like, communicate with your heart, because otherwise it gets lost in translation with the ego, which is not a bad thing. The ego can be really great, but balance is key, and the heart, but I think the reason people don't have experiences is because maybe their hearts aren't open, or maybe they think they are. But even if you would have asked me 10 years ago, is your heart open, I would have said yes. And the way it's open now is very different than the way that I consciously believed it was open back then.
And my friend Gretchen had a good way of putting it, where we're so used to, I need to see it to believe it, but in reality, you need to believe it to be able to see it.
Exactly. Yeah, it is one of those things, and obviously at MIU, there's tons of science behind all of this, and consciousness and the conscious field. I'm definitely not a scientist, so I'm not here to give a science lesson, but the information's out there. It's available. You know, the CIA has that big study.
That was awesome. So you sent me that study that the CIA did on psychic abilities, and I'm sure folks have probably heard a thing or two about what the CIA has done in terms of looking for mind control and psychic abilities. But the more you research it, they've done quite a bit. And yeah, you sent me a study that they were using this gateway process. That was one of the things I wanted to mention to you when shortly after I had the soul retrieval with you, I bought that same process and started doing some of those very deep meditations, and it's been this really fascinating game changer, just the capabilities of what is possible.
I love that so much. Excuse me. But I think that's really great. I'll have to dive into those. I've been so lost in like the quantum jumping, but I really want to do that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all the information's out there and it's right in front of us, but it's like, if you can't see it, it's not real. But gosh, I mean, you can't see atoms, but they're real, you know?
Yeah. Yeah,
this is so cool.
Yeah, right. So it was 7 series, and so I've only started the first one, but I'm already like, oh man, this is really crazy.
This is so cool. And this is what the CIA uses, the gateway experience.
Yeah, exactly.
That is so awesome.
And part of what it is like it's this hemisync thing. So you're talking about like binaural beats earlier, and like even just the very first introduction session, they use binaural beats to get your brain, both hemispheres of the brain, in total synchronization, and it was unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah.
I might have to borrow this from you when you're done with it.
Yeah, totally.
I'm so into this stuff. I think it's really great. And, you know, that's why, like, with healing, I've been so much in my mind over the past few years, and I really think, like, it's not something complicated. That's why when I quantum jumped to a part of me that solved all my problems, and I'm like, what was the thing that did it? Like, what treatment system, what herbs, what magic did you use? And they're like, just keep doing your transcendental meditation. Because the human mind, I mean, we're using 5% of it if we're lucky. I mean, studies show it can be less than that, even like 1%. So, gosh, I mean, we're creating the universe with our consciousness, with our intentions, with our thoughts. You know, years ago, I wrote this paper about how the chronic debilitating health of humanity is a mirror of the chronic debilitating health of the planet. And, you know, I love Greta Thunberg and everything she does. She's one of my favorite humans on the planet. And I spend a lot of time, you know, and I'm obviously very conscious about everything I do. But after learning TM, it's like, you know, that really is the thing. You know, if every person learned transcendental meditation and just started working on themselves, like the planet would start to heal, because people would be conscious of the things that they're using or abusing, or, you know, and they don't even know it, or they do and they don't know how to change it. You know, it's amazing the things that change passively when you start diving into things like transcendental meditation. Even my income has increased tenfold in just 2 months. You know, this is an embarrassing story, but I spent 6 months in Chicago to get better Lyme treatment, and I was living off savings, and I'm super good with money. So even being a sick single mom with Lyme disease and a kid with Lyme disease, paying for 2 humans for treatment, like, it's insane. And I'm doing it. I don't have rich family. You know, I don't have any support system, really. I have good friends now, and, like, I'm making my own support system. But when I came back from Chicago, I was like, okay, you know, there's just too much mold out there, and I couldn't afford the treatments with the doctor, but we got good diagnoses that are like legitimate, CDC approved and all that junk, so that everybody would stop telling me I was crazy. And working on like back pay disability for the times that I was bedridden and for like some of my struggles now, but until I can get on my feet a little bit better with my health. But anyway, so we came back to Colorado in September of last year, and so just recently, and I was like, okay, well, I got to get out of mold. I'm detoxing from severe mold toxicity, SIRS, which is a chronic inflammatory response syndrome, mast cell activation, allergic to life. You know, I couldn't even be outside in Chicago because the outside mold was so bad.
Wow.
Like, let alone inside. Like, it just, and there was no place I could go. I couldn't go into buildings, grocery stores, because I could tell I'm like a canary. As soon as I go into a place, I'm like, you guys have mold problems. And so we moved back. I bought this camper, like a brand new camper. I had it tested for mold because new stuff can be, you know, moldy too. And my brother was like, look, I've got like 10 acres. Just park it on my property. You can live it in my house if you want to, but we probably have a mold problem that's underlying, we're in an old house. So I bought this camper to live in to detox from mold. And I thought, if he makes me mad, I'll just hook it up to my SUV and we'll go traveling, So I had this plan and the universe had a different plan. And, and I don't know what happened but I was just at the worst dry spot of my life. My savings had run out. And I wasn't getting new hypnosis clients. I was living on a mountain with one cell phone bar, with internet. It was rough. And my brother's nuts, and we've never had a good relationship. And he totally lost his mind, which I expected. And I went to take my camper and go. And my mom was like, well, you finance that in my name, because I wanted to upgrade my car and I could do one or the other. And so, which I paid all my savings for this down payment for this camper. I paid all the payments, and my mom was like, you're not taking it. You and Sophia, that's my daughter, can just die on the streets. And I'm like, whoa, she's obviously not healthy, alcohol brain and what a trauma brain. And, I bless you with love, but that's it. I can't have anything to do with you people. And so I had nothing. I had my daughter and we went to a hotel in Woodland Park, Colorado. And I tried fundraising to not be screwed and live in my car. It's the middle of winter in Colorado, and which I traded in my car for a cheaper car, which helped a lot. But I just my friend in Denver was come to Denver. I bought this house and it's sitting there. It's not ready for me. They're disabled and they asked me to live there. And I'm like, okay. I'm nervous because I've had all this experience with mold and stuff. And I get there and it's the most beautiful house I've ever seen in my life. And then I started getting tons of business, crazy business for my hypnosis, for my shamanic soul work, for stuff. I've just been so busy. I started my master's program, my daughter started school, and we just got on our feet so quickly. I've got tons of money in my savings account again. And it just kind of happened within really since I started doing TM. It's just all these channels open passively and magic happens in one's life. Mm-hmm. And it's nothing I did. And I think that's a big lesson for me, is to let go and flow. And that's the message in Transcendental Meditation. It's not about controlling your thoughts or your experience. You don't trying is forbidden in Transcendental Meditation. It's prohibited. You just flow with your experience and allow life to happen for you. Just doing that, letting go. All these opportunities are flowing my way. I've had so many checks just show up in the mail for thousands and thousands of dollars. And I'm like, how is this real? It's just I don't even understand how this is possible, but I just am thankful. I'm so grateful. And I have a lot of Hindi friends and they're like, it's just your good karma. I'm like, oh God, I hope so. But, it's fascinating how when we try to change our lives, in hypnosis school, we're taught trying implies failure. If you say, go try to lift up a chair, I think Tony Robbins says this, try to lift up the chair and this lady picks it up. It's no, try. You're picking up the chair. I want you to try to pick up the chair. And she looks dumbfounded. It's you can't try. You either do it or you don't. Yeah. Or you're working on something, but, trying, I work on avoiding using that word because it does imply failure. And I feel every time I try to change my life and change my trajectory, I failed. And then when I just let go of the reins completely and just flowed, it's I'm living in $1 million house. I've got checks coming in the mail every week, more than, and it's insane to me. And I'm just going to continue to be me and do what I do and be a good person in the world and do my meditations, and all seems to be coming together. And it doesn't mean that can't change tomorrow, but sure. I'm just grateful in the moment. I think just opening the mind opens up endless possibilities.
And you talked about a great analogy you told me was the one with holding on to a rope that's shredding up your hands.
Oh yeah, I feel that a lot. That's totally me. Maybe I'm seeing something in you that I've been doing to myself my whole life. Thank you for being a little piece of a mirror for me. But it really is. It feels like, so many people are holding on to this rope, and I get this. I see this a lot in doing shamanic work, and they can't, it's like there's a fog underneath of them and they can't see the ground, and they're holding onto this rope and they're bleeding and their rope's shredding. And then if they just let go, the ground is right beneath their feet and they can hit the ground running anytime. But it's like, what are you even holding on to? And when I ask myself that, I'm like, I don't even know. What was I holding on to? Like a really sick alcoholic family who threw me out on the streets over literally nothing and like just their own insanity. And I've made such a great community, family, friends here in Denver so quickly. It's like 1 minute I'm homeless and broke, and then the next I've got like all my bills are paid for several months in advance, and I've got savings, and I'm starting my master's, and all these opportunities just keep showing up for me because I just let go. And it's like the universe was waiting for me to do that for so many years, but I had all these beliefs that weren't mine. Like, it's your family, you have to love them, you have to put up with their abuse because it's your family. It's like, no, I can cut them all out and still pray for them and send them love with my heart every day. And it doesn't change anything. It just puts me in a healthier, safer place. And I'm not at the other end of their trigger anymore. And I can, I don't hate them. I don't have anger toward them. I've forgiven them, but forgiveness and setting boundaries, it's like you can forgive somebody, but it doesn't mean you have to tolerate their abuse too. And loving myself and respecting myself. And it's like the more I do that, the more I vibrate that out to the universe and it comes back to me. And I just receive so much love and respect and support because I showed myself that love and respect and support by risking being homeless. And now life is just unfolding so beautifully. Yeah. And I don't have any expectations. I have intentions and goals because I think that's healthy and important. And I have big dreams, of course, but I don't really care. I'm not attached to how I get there because I've wanted a house like the one I'm living in for a long time. It definitely doesn't look like what I thought, but it's happening. And so, I think just flowing and letting go and creating that conscious space and just being a loving, kind person in the world. I feel like that's how you get what you want in life.
Yeah, it's like that whole idea of karma and the universe responds with the energy that you put out. And I think the reason so many people don't recognize it is just so much of the message that our society puts out and what people think is being quote unquote successful is keeping you further and further away of recognizing who we truly are and being entwined with the planet and with spirituality. And so the more that you embrace that, the more you see that the world is always working in your favor. We just haven't been willing to see it.
Exactly. That's exactly right. It really, it's so stupidly simple, and all we have to do is let go, but it's scary to let go. Yeah. And it's like, well, how does that bloody rope feel? It doesn't feel very good. You're absolutely right. It's been there all along. And it makes me wonder, looking back, how long has this been here? And even though I've had a lot of challenges in life, it certainly hasn't been bad. I've lived all over the world. I've done more things in my lifetime at 35 than people have done in 5 lifetimes. I love flying. I love being up in the air. I love the movie Up in the Air with
George Clooney.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of my favorites. And I want to have 1,000,000 miles on my United points, miles and stuff, and have that silly announcement. That's a goal of mine. I love traveling. And I always used to think, okay, if this plane crashes, would I be happy with my life right now? And as I'm leaving Europe after living there for 6 months, or leaving South Korea or New Zealand, and it's like, well, of course I would be. I just did the coolest stuff ever. But looking back now, I'm like, gosh, I feel like my life didn't even begin until recently. So, but we're always reincarnating within ourselves, maybe, growing and changing as our consciousness grows and changes, and the meaning of our life changes over and over again, which is why I stopped being attached to an outcome and just letting go and flowing and just being grateful for every experience in the present moment without attaching to a specific outcome. I don't care what happens. I do, because I'm not a sociopath, but I want the best for my life and for my daughter, but I just trust so much that everything will be okay. And a lot of that has to do with 3 weeks ago, I went to the ER, like having an anaphylactic attack. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to go, I'm going to go, And after suffering so much with Lyme disease, and I know suffering is a mindset, and I've learned that, and I don't suffer. But it's like, I don't care, because I'm just going to turn into energy and go back to the source. I'll miss my daughter, but I'll be the source, and I won't even care when I'm the source. So I just let go of everything, And I think that has helped me so much with coping with feeling like I'm dying all the time in my body, like chronically dizzy and feeling like I'm going to black out all the time and having organs that hurt. And I don't really recognize pain in my body. And I think that's grown even stronger since beginning Transcendental Meditation. Like when a doctor will be asking me, trying to figure out what's happening in my body, is there pain? And I'm like, I don't actually, like I have to really think about it. I'm like, oh, I'm actually in a lot of pain if I focus on it, but I'm not focused on it. Like my heart, I just have such fierce love in my heart, and it's just always so open that I really think, I've met so many people who have told me, like, you're just the happiest person I've ever met. And they're like, you have this horrible disease. How is that possible? And like, it's just because I'm more than the crappy things that are wrong with my body. Like, it's just, I've got this beautiful spirit, and it's huge and big, and it makes life awesome.
Well, and it was even our most recent reading on cosmic consciousness, thinking about as you start to integrate transcendental meditation and that just becomes your natural state of being. Like, of course, you still feel emotions, and you hit your finger with a hammer, it's still going to hurt, but you don't identify with the pain. You identify with the consciousness behind it.
That's exactly right. I feel like in cosmic consciousness, what we've been reading in our master's program, it's basically after enough time of doing transcendental meditation, your consciousness goes from transcendental consciousness to this transitional phase that goes into cosmic consciousness, which lasts. And once you reach cosmic consciousness, you are without stress. You're living in a blissful state 24/7. You're always conscious. Your sleep changes. You're always aware, and it can't go away. It's like once you're there, you can't go back. It's like the Matrix, once you take the one pill, that's it, which is a relief. I mean, it could take 100 years. It could take 2 years. It just depends on the individual and their experience and whatnot. And it doesn't mean you're doing anything right or wrong. But I think that's true. And I think maybe perhaps I'm catching glimpses of that, because you grow slowly into cosmic consciousness.
But you've also always been very attuned to spirituality and to higher planes of consciousness. So certainly this isn't like TM isn't the only way to get to this state of consciousness. It's just a very effective, simple technique that has been used by people all around the world for decades.
Exactly. It's like the easiest way to get there, because again, I feel like even in hypnosis, I'm just scratching the surface, but with TM, it really opens you up to your own self, which is everything. It's really exciting.
Yeah. And for folks who, I know it can sound a little woo-woo if it's all new concepts to you, but, for me, not just like the practice of TM was certainly instrumental in my decision to go to MIU, but even more important for me personally was just the philosophy and theory of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, where he put in what I believe is the best paradigm for a theory of everything and what is called the unified field of consciousness. And then folks like John Hagelin, who's a CERN-trained quantum physicist, and Tony Nader, who's a neuroscientist. I went to, I believe, Stanford. Like, these guys have built upon his work, but then continued to put it in the parlance of modern physics and modern neuroscientists to say, guys, this is not just theoretical or spirituality or in your head some type of placebo effect. There is real science behind this, and the studies that you can see that MIU has done and other institutions like Deepak Chopra and the like have just been finding just incredible results that for people who are practicing these types of consciousness-related modalities.
Beautifully put. Yeah, you just said like all the science stuff that I couldn't put into words, but that's exactly right. And that's what we're doing. We're not just sitting around floating on clouds at MIU. I mean, kind of, but like we're going through studies, we're learning from these doctors and physicists and neuroscientists and stuff. So it's powerful. I mean, I'm the type of person, because of my life and experiences, crossing over spirits as a little kid, they'd come to me and ask me to turn on the light, and I would open up this portal and they'd go away, and I'm like, I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew what I was doing. So I don't need to be convinced, but there are so many people in the world who are skeptics, and I respect that completely. It's for me, I just love seeing the science behind it. And I think maybe that helps a part of my own brain to open up even greater, because like every part of me knows this because it is me. But then there's that little piece of my brain that like gets extra excited and opens up even deeper to those deeper levels of consciousness, knowing like this is scientifically supported in every way. And again, it's all obvious. It's all right in front of our face. And, with technology, you can Google any of this stuff and read about it. So I don't, with the work that I do, I've worked with tons of skeptics who, like maybe somebody's wife sent them to me, or when they're like, I don't know what I'm doing here. My wife thinks you can help me, and they're like, we got our second eviction notice and we're getting a divorce and she cheated on me and my life is a mess and I don't think anything you do is real, but let's do this. And then like that guy's a millionaire now and from the work that we've done together. So I don't care if somebody's skeptic when they come to me for healing work. Like it means nothing to me. They're going to get their healing session no matter what. They're going to get better. And I've had a lot of people like end up getting sober and be like, oh, I didn't even know I had a drinking problem until that, and so for me, like I'm not a person who needs to be convinced, but I do certainly absolutely like wallow in the science. Like I just love it so much and I soak it up. It's great to explore, to read about, and it just opens up my own consciousness even greater. And I definitely appreciate that.
And it's cool. And that was certainly, I come from kind of the opposite side of the spectrum, right? Where I was always a skeptic, believed in the dogma of scientific materialism, and then getting introduced to metaphysical concepts like the unified field of consciousness and the holographic universe was what intellectually allowed me to be open to it. And then as I started to explore spiritual practices and believe, I started to see.
I love that. And here we are, like we come from opposite ends of the spectrum, and yet we still meet in the middle, because that's like what we learn at MIU. Recently, we talked about how in Transcendental Meditation, when we try to help ourselves, we make it worse. Just let go and go with the flow. Allow your crazy thoughts to happen. Allow you, if you're being guided to go deeper, just allow yourself to fall deeper, because the natural law is energy flows to the path of least resistance, to greater happiness, to greater bliss. And so by default, that's where we all end up. Some people, it might take them till the end of their life. Some people are so stuck in their pattern, but nothing is impossible. Again, I'm like the airy fairy hippie and you're like the skeptic. And here we are like talking about consciousness in the unified field. And, you came to me for soul work, and my vehicle was like a lifetime of trauma and disease. And somehow whatever happened in my brain to open me up to be intuitive, and you were on the scientific skeptical side, and you talk about using like psychedelics in the past to open you up, which is fascinating and awesome. And however people get there, they get there, but it's what we're striving for. The only thing we have to do is let go and accept it and allow it to happen, versus like trying. And people talk about like the key to unlock the secrets of the universe, and like it's this magical complex thing, but again, transcendental meditation isn't the only way to get there. You can get there so many ways. A lot of athletes talk about their experiences of pure bliss amidst chaos. And I think that's really beautiful. They're catching glimpses of this cosmic consciousness, this higher state of being within oneself that is natural. That's our natural state. All this chaos and stress and rubbish is not our natural state. We flow to this, and we can go kicking and screaming, or we can let go and just allow life to happen for us. I feel like I love Oprah, and I think maybe it's her. She'll say like, your dreams are there waiting for you. They're just waiting for you to step into them, and I feel like it really is that simple. And as I'm guilty of being a former like super overthinker, and the more I let go and just stop worrying about how or why or when things are going to happen, and just accept each moment, even when they suck, for what it is, and accept the worst case scenario in every situation, it kind of helps me to flow a little bit easier. It helps feed the ego, because the ego needs a reason. Like, no, we're going to die, like literally sometimes, but it's like, so what? So we become energy, or like, what if I get mugged doing this? Or, so what? Then I didn't need that anyway, whatever. I call my credit card, I don't know. Like, it doesn't matter. You just go through, sometimes going down the rabbit hole with the ego helps to like let go. But I feel like a lot of people struggle with that, myself included in the past.
And I think the point you bring up about death and your view of it is so important, because for me, I think on the spiritual journey, having a very significant transcendental experience on psychedelics was really huge for me for a lot of reasons, but not the least of which was I lost my fear of death, right? Or at least my entire conception of death changed. And so, because when you stop thinking about us only having this one life or being just terrified of what comes next, and you recognize, of course, it's just our concept of time and of life is so limited from what it truly is. And when you start to recognize that we are all the same consciousness, that time is just a construct that we have created because we perceive events sequentially, but that's not the true nature of things, then you start to recognize that truly all you ever have is the eternal present now.
Exactly. Beautifully put. I couldn't have said that better. Yeah, for me, Lyme disease helped me get rid of my fear of death because, I wrote this poem a long time ago. It just like kind of came to me out of the ethers. And one of the things I said was like, death looks different when it's alive. And now I understand because like Lyme is like that, it's worse than death because you're so miserable. And like, you just, death would be a gift at certain times, and I'd like not to be triggering to anybody. But I just stopped caring, and I love my kid more than the air I breathe, and I would hate to be away from her, but it just let me let go. And for me, that was my transcendental experience. It's not very pretty, but it got me there. And doing shamanic work, obviously, it's a whole lot easier for me who crosses over spirits, and I can go on a shamanic journey to the place where we go when we die and ask my guides to show me. And, they'll put an anchor so that I don't stay there because it's so dang blissful, But it doesn't have to be like, I really love Leonard Orr's work. He talks a lot about immortality, works with the immortal yogis of the Himalayas and stuff, and which I'd love to go explore when my health is a little better. When I have a better CD57, I'll go to India. But he talks about like, and not bashing Christianity. I think it's beautiful, and I think it helps a lot of people. I think there's just a lot of information that's either there or not, and I think a lot of people think they have to die and go to heaven or something in order to experience bliss, when that's just not true. Our natural state is bliss, and heaven is within your heart. It's within you, and it can be. It's possible. You can find it anyway. I think Transcendental Meditation is a great, just because it's so dang easy. Pay the money and get trained to do this, because you're paying all this money, but you get your ceremony, you get like a week of classes and this unlimited library of phenomenal resources. Like, it's just really beautiful, and it's just the easiest way to get there. A lot of really famous people do TM, and there's a link between like super rich and famous people who are like philanthropists and most of them do TM, and they have a deep level of conscious awareness.
Ray Dalio, Ellen DeGeneres,
Jim Carrey, Oprah. She's really spiritual, and she does different. I don't know if she does TM, but I know she's really into consciousness. And
she's really close with Deepak, who comes from a TM background. And actually, I was going to mention, for folks who aren't quite ready to do the TM course because of the cost or whatever it is, Deepak's Chopra app is pretty good and has a lot of good mantra-based meditations for lower price point.
Oh, that's a good. I didn't know that. That's really good. I can like refer that to people who are like, I can't pay the price for it, and I'm grateful that at the time when I couldn't either, it was like rolled into my tuition. So I'm like, well, I'll pay for it eventually. But yeah, which now is fine. But it's really easy. It's really great. But there are so many other ways, and I just think I think it's the best way to get there because of how easy it is.
I agree, and it's just like it's the consistency and just the way that you're able to integrate it into your daily life. And Maharishi talks a lot about how important that is, that you integrate both action and meditation, and that's how it just becomes a natural part of your being.
Exactly. Yeah. Periods of rest with periods of action. And for me, if you suffer always having to be doing something. Like I always have to be productive, or it used to be, which TM has fixed that. I'm like, oh gosh, 20 minutes twice a day. I don't have time for that, which is the stupidest thing I could probably ever say. I've actually had more time in my day since doing this, because your brain, like,
totally.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
You've experienced that too.
Yeah.
It's like your brain rearranges everything. So because you don't have all the stress. And when the stress is gone, you can see clearly. So it just makes life easier. And I've got so much time in my day, and I'm extremely productive, and I'm not taking 2 naps a day. You know, like everything's changing for the best. And it's so passive. It's effortless. It's beautiful.
And on that point, I've found that my creativity when I'm deep in meditation is on a whole another level. And I'll come to solutions for problems that I wouldn't have thought of otherwise. And then like, oh, I was stressing about this thing that was going to take me 40 hours. Now I can do it in 2 with this creative solution.
Isn't that incredible? I love that so much. I feel that. That's been happening more. In 2020, I had stem cell therapy, and the Lyme got worse because I wasn't on the right protocol, and I ended up having a stroke. It wasn't massive, but like I blacked out. My daughter called the paramedics at 3 years old. She's like, awesome, saved my life. But like I stopped doing a lot of things. I stopped painting. Like, you know, I'm a little more shakier than usual, but like, I mean, my brain is fine. It's recovered for the most part. There's like one little spot that shows up in an MRI, but it's not like detrimental by any means. And like, I mean, I went home from the hospital. I'm a single mom, you know, I gave my kid a bath, made dinner, you know, like just carried on with my life. And I don't know if that's a good thing, but it's my life, and that's just how things seem to have been happening in the past. But I've just since doing TM, it's opened up creative channels, and I've started painting again, and painting beautiful Sanskrit things, and just
oh, cool.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Like and things that just come to me naturally.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. It just I feel like it just opens up everything, and we've only just really, we're like babies in this, you know, and imagine
we're like 5 weeks in or something. It's
yeah,
crazy.
literally, like it's not that. But it's crazy. And there are studies that are in like some of the most recent readings that we're doing in our class that show brain coherence. There's a bunch of studies in the most recent reading for our master's program, and one of them's a brain coherence study, and they measure with EEGs to the brain coherence of somebody not meditating, eyes open, and then somebody practicing transcendental meditation. And they work with 2 groups. One group has been meditating for 1 year or less, and then the next group is 9 years or more. So the group meditating for 1 year or less, their brain coherence grew higher during transcendental meditation, but the group who had been meditating with transcendental meditation for 9 years or more, their brain coherence was already extremely high outside of meditation because of cosmic consciousness. And it might have grown a hair higher or stayed the same during TM, which is the point. You know, it makes you, it's not about what happens in meditation. It's about carrying that consciousness with you outside of meditation, and eventually it sticks. That coherence it can't go away. That cosmic consciousness doesn't go away once you achieve it, you know, unless you become like a vegetable or something. But even then, your consciousness is probably still super coherent, you know? It's wild how this all works.
It is so wild. Well, Kendra, this has been such a fun conversation tonight. Thank you so much for coming over. You know, I guess before you wrap, any advice that you give to the audience as a whole? I know we talked a lot about TM, but anything else that you think, if folks are curious about consciousness or spirituality?
Yeah, just dive within yourself. I know that can be an annoying piece of advice that people like to give, but I mean, the answers really are within you. And if you're quiet enough, whether it's through TM or finding a peaceful place in nature for an afternoon, you know, there's something magical about that. And, you know, your problems seem to dissolve. So I think loving yourself and going within yourself is the most important thing you can do.
Awesome.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks everyone for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Kendra's work with shamanic practices is super fascinating to me, particularly because the whole idea of shamanism remains a bit abstract, similar to the concepts of magic or witchcraft. I found Terence McKenna's definition of shamanism as helpful in building a mental framework here. He defines shamanism as the practice of the Upper Paleolithic tradition of healing, divination, and theatrical performance based on natural magic developed 10 to 50,000 years ago. Shamanic ecstasy is an act of surrender that authenticates both the individual self and that which is surrendered to, the mystery of being. Because our maps of reality are determined by our present circumstances, we tend to lose awareness of the larger patterns of time and space. Only by gaining access to the transcendent other can those patterns of time and space and our role in them be glimpsed. Shamanism strives for this highest point of view. McKenna has been a huge inspiration on my journey, not just for the uniqueness and profundity of his theories, but also for his willingness to show conviction in ideas that defy convention and were often unpopular. Another of his ideas that has been meaningful for me is the idea that we're currently undergoing an archaic revival. Archaic refers to this same Upper Paleolithic period, during which time human societies practiced nomadic pastoralism and partnership, a culture based on cattle raising, shamanism, and goddess worship. Revival, in the sense that our current Western culture is in the process of resurrecting important elements of this archaic period, with restored, harmonious attitudes towards community, substance use, and nature. As I look to be of service in catalyzing this archaic revival, one way I hope to do so is by highlighting the science of consciousness. For people who, like me, approach the topic of spirituality with a skeptic-first perspective, seeing the results of the science of consciousness can prove instrumental in breaking mental paradigms. Because once you understand the limitations of scientific materialism, you can start to understand that these shamanic practices are simply practical means of achieving higher states of consciousness, unique physiological states which are fully backed by scientific research. For example, Kendra and I spoke at length about the practice of Transcendental Meditation, which is run by Maharishi International University. I chose to enroll at MIU specifically because the body of research they've conducted over the past decades supporting a science of consciousness is so strong. Kendra mentioned the increased brain coherence both during and outside of meditation. Other studies on transcendental meditators versus control groups have found increased power of attention, increases in holistic intelligence, including creativity and field independence or the ability to see the forest for the trees, improved memory and perception, improved athletic performance, reduced cardiovascular disease and death by 23 to 33% for long-term meditators, over 50% of smokers who chose to quit within 2 years of learning transcendental meditation, improved blood glucose and insulin levels, reduced insulin resistance, and more stable autonomic nervous system functioning, 23% expansion in lifespan, 55% lower rates of cancer, and on and on and on. But if the health benefits of transcendental meditation and other daily meditation practices are so meaningful and far-reaching, why does our society in general continue to ignore them? I'd imagine one important reason is the limited financial incentive for big pharma to encourage meditation in the prevention and treatment of disease. As the support for meditation and integrated medicine continues to pile up, I expect our society will push further away from the confines of allopathic or Western medicine, that will embrace a holistic view of health, one that rejects the idea of the human as a machine made up of parts, but rather acknowledges that mind, body, and soul are one unified being. And as we extend the science of consciousness past the individual into the collective, we get into the seemingly more paranormal field effects of consciousness. For example, a small group of meditators growing in higher states of consciousness, functioning in a more orderly manner, can neutralize social stress and bring orderliness to the whole society. This effect has been observed over and over and over again when the population of people practicing transcendental meditation daily exceeds 1% of the total city population. This example of the resonant field effects of consciousness is known colloquially as the Maharishi effect. 22 studies on the effect have shown decreased crime rates, including decreased violent crimes and homicides. The average reduction in crime in these studies ranged from 8% to 23%. This is not magic or mysticism. These field effects are grounded in hard science. The reason group meditation is more powerful than individual meditation has to do with the principle of wave behavior called constructive interference. In John Hagelin's words, the radiated power and resulting societal effects emanating from a group of meditators will grow as the square of the number of meditators in the group, i.e. grow quadratically as opposed to linearly. This is because the amplitude or height of a wave is equal to the sum of all the contributing waves that occupy a common space. Yet the power of that resulting combined wave is proportional to the square of the height of the wave. That is why, for example, the volume of two loudspeakers playing monaural sound in close proximity to each other is 2 squared, or 4 times the sound of a single loudspeaker. It is also why the intensity of laser light grows as the square of the number of photons in the beam. This is a universal principle of wave behavior known as constructive interference. So I hope that as more research is brought to light supporting the science of consciousness, we Homo sapiens in 2022 will continue to re-examine who we are and what is our role in this cosmic dance. That will start to question whether our current scientific paradigms and hierarchical power structures are in fact built upon flimsy houses of cards. That maybe those upper Paleolithic peoples understood a thing or two about creating harmonious societies. And that will once again move towards a partnership model that embraces the feminine divine and lives in cooperation with nature.